The dusty wind of Arizona Territory whispered through the canyon as young rancher Samuel Hayes arrived at Fort Dry Creek. They hired him for one job: to guard a savage Apache prisoner locked in a wooden stockade. The soldiers said she was dangerous, merciless, and that her tribe wanted her back at any cost. But when Samuel first saw her chained in silence, her eyes were not wild, they were filled with a heavy grief he could not ignore. In that moment, something changed inside him, and he knew this would not be just another job. The Apache girl's name was Nayeli. She was only 19, yet her spirit looked older than the earth itself. The soldiers mocked her, calling her a savage, but Samuel noticed the way she sat, proud, unbroken, almost royal. He tried to look away, but her presence pulled him in like drifting smoke. She didn't speak, but her silence was stronger than any scream. Samuel felt a strange pull toward her, a feeling he couldn't explain. He had guarded many before, but never like this. The fort was cold at night. The men laughed, drank, and told stories of battles, but Samuel remained by the stockade. Nayeli never begged, never cried. She only watched the sky as though it remembered her. One night, Samuel brought her water and bread. She didn't touch it. Instead, she looked at him as if asking, "Why are you different from the others?" He had no answer. Yet somehow, he felt he didn't come here to guard her, he came here to understand her. Whispers spread that the Apache tribe would soon come for her, not to save her, but to kill her for being captured. The army planned her transfer to another fort at sunrise, where she would never be seen again. Samuel heard this and felt a sudden tightness in his chest. Why did it matter so much to him? Why did he feel that if she disappeared, something sacred would be erased from the world? He couldn't explain it, but he knew losing her would haunt him forever. Days passed, and the world inside the fort grew colder. One evening, Samuel found her shivering. Without hesitation, he removed his coat and placed it gently over her shoulders. The guards laughed. "The savage doesn't need kindness," they said. But Samuel didn't care. For the first time, Nayeli spoke softly, only 3 words: "Why help me?" Samuel froze. Her voice was calm, but fragile. He simply replied, "Because someone should." That night, Samuel could not sleep. His decision had taken root in silence. He would not let her be taken away. He didn't know how, or when, or even why, but the feeling inside him was stronger than fear. Every rule of the fort suddenly felt wrong. He wondered if any law was greater than humanity. The image of her eyes stayed with him, filling his mind with fire. He felt madness or courage, he wasn't sure which, but he knew he had to act. He asked the captain to ease her chains, but the request was denied. "That girl is a threat. Don't get attached," the captain warned. Yet Samuel already was. He had seen no threat, only a wounded soul trapped between 2 worlds. He sensed that her story was buried beneath pain. The other guards saw only an enemy, Samuel saw a survivor. That difference was what set his destiny in motion, like a fuse burning toward an unseen explosion. The more he watched Nayeli, the more he noticed details no one else cared about: the faded beads around her wrist, a small carving hidden in her palm, scars on her back that told stories of punishment and exile. One evening, when she thought no one was watching, she whispered a prayer in the Apache language. Her voice trembled, not with fear, but with memory. Samuel realized he wasn't protecting a prisoner, he was guarding a heart that had almost forgotten how to beat. But guards had their limits. 2 soldiers warned Samuel to step away from the girl or be replaced. They called her cursed, an omen of death. Samuel stayed calm, but inside he felt a storm. That night, lightning shook the canyon, and the wind screamed like restless spirits. Samuel stood outside the stockade, drenched in rain, guarding her alone. Nayeli looked at him and bowed her head, not in fear, but gratitude. It was the first time she didn't seem alone. At dawn, Samuel found a note on his bunk: "Do your duty, or we will remove you." He stared at it for a long time. Duty. That word now felt like a chain around his own heart. He remembered his father saying, "A man's real duty is to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Samuel took a deep breath and walked toward the stockade. He was no longer just a guard. He had become something else, something dangerous to the rules of this fort. Nayeli began to speak in short sentences. She told him that her tribe believed she betrayed them, although she never did. She said that every sunrise felt like a punishment. Yet when she spoke to Samuel, her voice sounded different, alive. She asked him why he did not fear her like the others. Samuel replied, "Because I see the human in you." Those words broke the silence between them like a bridge finally built across a river of pain. But bridges are fragile during war. The captain saw the growing bond and ordered Samuel to step away from the prisoner permanently. He obeyed for 1 day, and it felt like a year. That night, he watched from afar as Nayeli sat alone under the moonlight, her eyes glowing with quiet sorrow. Samuel felt the world grow still. He made his decision. If he could not protect her inside the fort, then he would save her by taking her out of it. The transfer orders were signed. At sunrise, she would be taken north, never to return. Samuel felt his heart pounding like war drums. He knew there were soldiers, locked gates, and strict rules ahead. But something inside him had already crossed the line. He approached the stockade quietly. Nayeli looked up, sensing something different. Samuel whispered, "Do you trust me?" She stared at him for a long moment, then slowly nodded. And in that silent moment, Samuel Hayes, a simple rancher hired to guard a savage Apache, realized his true purpose: not to guard her, but to set her free. Night fell like a curtain, hiding Samuel's plan beneath shadows. He gathered a map, a stolen key, and his old revolver, not for killing, but only to buy time if needed. The fort slept under the silver moon, unaware that history was about to change. Samuel moved like a ghost through the camp. Every step felt heavier than the last. Each footstep was a question: was this madness or destiny? He reached the stockade and unlocked the gate with trembling hands. Nayeli stood ready. She didn't run, she simply looked at him, as if saying, "I knew you would come." They slipped into the night, following the canyon path where the river whispered like a hidden guide. The earth smelled of rain, and silence guarded them better than any walls. Samuel led the way, but Nayeli moved as if she knew the land better than her own heartbeat. For the first time, she was unchained, yet fear still followed her like a shadow. She asked Samuel what freedom meant to him. He replied, "The courage to choose what is right, even when the world punishes you for it." She nodded slowly. That answer stayed with her. But freedom has a price. The search party discovered their escape at dawn, and the alarm bell rang through the fort like thunder. Samuel and Nayeli reached the hills, but their tracks were found quickly. Soldiers mounted horses and followed with orders to shoot on sight. Samuel knew they had only hours. He cut through an old trail once used by native traders, hoping it would buy them time. Nayeli pointed to the mountains, her tribe's old homeland. "If we reach the Spirit Pass," she said, "we will be safe." Samuel believed her. They rested in a cave, tired and soaked from the rain. Samuel started a small fire with dry grass, and Nayeli sat across from him, her expression softer than he had ever seen. She told him stories of her mother, of her brother who vanished during a raid, and of the time she once believed all humans were enemies. Samuel listened silently. There was no hatred in her voice, only memory. He realized then that she did not need saving, she needed someone to stand beside her. And that, he had already become. The next day, they reached a ridge overlooking the valley, but Samuel spotted dust clouds, riders approaching fast. Nayeli said only one word: "Run." But Samuel refused to abandon her. They continued through rough terrain, their breaths sharp in the cold air. Samuel's boots were torn, and Nayeli's feet were bleeding, yet neither spoke of pain. They walked as if guided by something greater, hope. With each step, Samuel felt his old self fading behind him. The man who arrived to guard a prisoner was disappearing forever. At dusk, a lone wolf appeared on the hill and stared at them. Nayeli whispered that her people believed wolves guide the lost. The animal slowly turned and walked toward the northern trail. Samuel hesitated, but Nayeli followed without fear. They walked after it as the sky turned violet. When the wolf vanished between two boulders, they found something unexpected, an ancient trail marked with Apache carvings. Nayeli pressed her hand to one symbol and whispered a word Samuel could not understand, but he felt its power. They moved through the sacred path, yet danger was close behind. The soldiers reached the foothills and spread out. Samuel and Nayeli hid among red rocks as voices echoed nearby. In the silence, Samuel realized he would die to protect her, and somehow, that truth brought him peace. Nayeli looked at him with eyes that held both strength and sorrow. For the first time, she touched his hand. If I live, she said softly, it will be because your heart believed I was worth saving. Samuel had no words, only resolve. Night approached again, and the sky glowed with starlight. As they neared the Spirit Pass, they heard horses. The soldiers had found their trail. Samuel grabbed his revolver. Nayeli stood beside him, refusing to hide. This time, she would not run. Samuel took cover behind a rock and fired warning shots, forcing the riders to slow their advance. The echo thundered through the canyon. The soldiers shouted commands, but Samuel stood firm. Nayeli watched in silence, not afraid, but ready. The captain called out for Samuel to surrender. He refused. Gunfire erupted, but Samuel only aimed at the ground. He did not want blood. The soldiers advanced, and Samuel was nearly out of ammunition. Suddenly, a horn sounded across the canyon, deep and ancient. The soldiers froze. Emerging from the shadows were dozens of Apache warriors, faces painted, bows drawn, eyes burning with fury. Samuel whispered, "Your people came." Nayeli replied, "They came because they saw fire, not fear." The warriors approached. Samuel expected death, but Nayeli stepped forward and raised her hands. She spoke in their language, her voice steady as the wind. The soldiers panicked and retreated, surrounded by warriors. Samuel stood alone beside her, unsure of his fate. A tall Apache chief emerged, Nayeli's uncle. He looked at Samuel carefully. For a moment, no one breathed. Then Nayeli said, "He is not my captor. He is the reason I still live." The chief nodded slowly, and lowered his weapon. Samuel was brought to their hidden camp. He expected judgment, but received respect. The tribe listened to Nayeli's words as she told them everything. She did not speak like a prisoner, but like someone reborn. After she finished, the chief walked to Samuel and said, "The strongest warrior is the one who chooses compassion." He placed his hand over Samuel's heart. "This," he said, "is where true strength lives." Samuel felt more seen in that moment than in his entire life. Days passed in the canyon camp. Samuel and Nayeli sat by the river where the water ran clear and cold. She smiled more often now. The tribe accepted her again, but she was different, wiser, stronger. One evening, Nayeli returned Samuel's coat to him and said, "You lent this to a prisoner, now give it to a friend." He laughed softly and asked, "Only a friend?" Nayeli looked at the stars before answering, "Ask me again when the world is kinder." Samuel asked her what her future would be. She replied, "To walk between two worlds, so they may understand each other." And then she asked about his future. He thought for a moment and said, "To stand wherever your world meets mine." They did not confess love, they did not need to. Some bonds are too sacred for words. As dawn rose over the canyon, they faced the horizon together, two souls no longer chained by the past, but guided by what they chose to become. And so, the man sent to guard a savage Apache never truly guarded her, he guarded her hope. And because of that, she was free, and so was he.